muscular V-shaped gym human with 1.7 meters between shoulders and arms like trees. Chiseled manly face in the Chad direction, square buttocks, striated upper legs, like feathers, like an anatomy chart, disproportional 3D delts. To have an aesthetic look, like body sculpturing is about, you must have larger shoulders, work out all four heads. It is a weak adjustable muscle, the most injured at the gym, but to get 3D shoulders you can't just work out everything, you must work out the shoulders twice as much. The triceps was 2/3 of the arm, like a triceratops, an oak, meaty but didn't look unhealthy. Thus like Kevin Levrone, he had legs for arms, triceps looking then more differentiating than the biceps, so it is. Handsome everything, something to make the world's strongest men jealous. There seems to be a certain wisdom, patience with the greatest strength genetics, they can think strategically conquering society, mathematical. Having below 10% body fat can make you feel fatigue and brain fog, but James compensated by thinking he looked good. Looking into his mirror that didn't show enough of the body at any angle, he found green eyes that looked blank, could have been the Sahara Desert, focused first then intelligent, a specimen, could make you think about an INTJ like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and fell down the stairs backwards like he wasn't wearing a shirt. He missed the smart refrigerator. He had taught history in London for 3 years. He remembered having a genius lazy brain about his future until he was attracted by leisurely university history teaching with Greek philosophy. There was searching for his fitting potential, a worrying, frustrating amount of time, or until something was lazy enough. There were so many things he could do, anything his previous teachers had said, but when faced with the decision he didn't feel he had the right perspective or choosing demeanor, layers of perspectives for the right times he had, needless of action. Nothing was going to change, in history, was it? He was in a brutal band called Until the End, or next Sunday in a progressive metal band called Terribly Drawn Circles. He needed an outlet, being creative, thinking about songs and segments on automatic. They were working on the songs, I'm Going to Pull the Plug, When the Neighbors Wake Up, Life is Horrible and Then You Die, and Funeral of Dorks. You need more blast beats. Listening to their music was like brain surgery and a cat biting your toe at the same time, modern and niche like poetry aficionados wanting to go to a club or being raw food vegan. Not the progressive band. What was unusual with this backbone linebacker build or combination wasn't endurance or speed, but the clever mind indeed, speaking and being a thinker first, a surprising poetic giant, a deliberate cognizant, a nerdy 140 to 150 IQ when not lifting. An average prog metal instrumentalist, and viewer, listener. Being the smartest and brawniest was awesome, yet like hidden and hard to interpret, obviously it felt like being kindly recognized in your best theoretical version today. If someone insults your triceps you insult them intellectually, if someone insults your nerdy hobby you energetically throw them out of the window into the garbage disposal, hairy legs sticking up. Sometimes he was a gentle, fascinated, patient, observing.
Yeah, so that was it for the Hearthstone stream. It's been 2 hours now. It's just like I wanted to do today with having slept and rewriting and
Sometimes he was a gentle, fascinated, patient, observing, uninteractive person, seems related to strength. Being fascinated by color combination mods, tear-jerking shimmering red dawns, women and the human condition. Some mistook it for complacency and insensitivity, showing nothing but he could very actionable and emotional when it was finally time to act. The reservation and truth of the analyst. He had a conservative energy and reservation sometimes, but believed in left ideas, now being convinced by monologuing people, although giving everything a chance. Maybe he showed a less conservative side when speaking, in the brilliance and tolerance of theory. He had a pet 1.2 meters continental giant rabbit, these really exist, that ate vegetables for him at 100 pounds a month, called Sigmund the Destroyer. He was the light brown happiness with the big ears, his feet echoed like drums, dormant speed and giant-sized dormant power. He appreciated being fed these different vegetables shaped, stacked like vegetable cakes and being seemingly safe, but what if someone brought a dog? They had before. He viewed in front of the very sunny hobby room and looked out through the satellite room, high up like a cat. He liked looking at different people, recognizable cosmopolitan human world, and was happy until stimulation from something else was needed. As a rabbit things had to be familiar and thus he would show his cute sides. He was alert and cautious, easy to flight, but being 1.2 meters there was a fair amount of reasonably fair ground. He knew he was a special kind of animal. He was friendly with his human that came and went, strange alien-like purpose, but what purpose? What there is staying in here all the time. He wanted a garden. There was no second bunny. He had an expensive apartment in London. All apartments in London are expensive, where everything was sleek, futuristic, black and white, artsy and claustrophobic. It was just 120 square meters, but he had fit in a lot of furniture. He was materialistic about his apartment, his TV, everything had to give an impression, of course, exhausting and a look into his mind. Artist on vacation, everything had a place. He used his considerable contemporary salary to buy living room set after fitting kitchen set, it made him feel personal. It's like the start of the Fight Club movie. He was good at memorizing parts of history, he countered like an informed punch, something too true. He was already ready to pay attention and categorize history, to point out a fifth detail too far. He had the complete history of the world series, memorized gistly in 15 books, but thought it didn't go deep enough. What was the point of the left revolutions of South America? That's more important. Why did America stop every single one? Even if communism doesn't work out so well in practice and so far, what is the threat to capitalism and how costly do it need to be to defend this broken system? Turns out when you're a thinker you like getting to the bottom of why and how things work, fascinated and unrelenting, unwavering, as you need it, every thinker taking the same path, not noticing each other, proper and thorough inner world. Curious in a way doesn't always make sense and exhausting to exert and listen to, but to get things going sometimes you need to have an extra fire lit under you. The energy to keep unwavering, countering with a second truth. If you miss the chance to be thorough intellectually, you might miss the differentiating part. Every personality, maybe out of 16, has their own kind of introverted underfire, especially the introverts, and a time to fit the intensity. 95% of people are thinkers, we're not orangutans. And less differentiating personality types, thought James, mixing his protein powder with cocoa powder, spirulina algae and creatine in a white tank top. The V-shape gleamed good in contrast to the white. The room was comfortably dimly lit and would tell him to sleep if he had listened deeper. He had a smoothie of healthy dark green leaves, pure fiber, flax seeds and long pepper. He would make another one and fit in the excess health, forgetting he had another 5 things to fit into his eccentric intelligence. Better safe than sorry. In recovery for perfect recovery, he was in his routine of gymming and reading, both making him smarter, BDNF vascular and through language. The prospect of reading is enough to increase IQ points, the efficient part is the language part. He was thinking about how there's the perfect and worst position in 4D chess or 5D golf. The smart thing to figure out here is, and how to beat 4D chess. There is not a certainty or probability cloud, but you have to go for the next best thing. If you had an AI being able to consider every, let's say, 1,000 positions, you would find the swing that moved the ball to the hole in 4D dimensions at the same time. Just look for it, you wait until you find the guaranteed best move. And the worst one, both backwards unless you swung at a limited amount of degrees. In 7-dimensional golf there could be an uneven amount of middle ground and perfect cohesive swings. We must quantify strange infinites, listing exceptions to logic, or consider brackets like pre-thought to consider same proclivities. They are like a dip into an abyss, thus in thought. The feeling was light, hovering and lightly touching subjects. Was everyone unique, impressionable, who wanted to change the world a feeler then? More feeling than they thought maybe, so many people are just not impressionable or concerned. James was an ENTP Myers-Briggs personality, great personality writing, concerned with ideas, future and theory, math, science, logic, abstract instead of practical, the intuitive extroverted engaging in the world giving him artistic blur and ideas, and being able to pick complicated relations seemingly from nothing, from a mind in the clouds in abstract trans contexts. No one else can do this actually. 6 brain areas are always activated instead of 2, relations. I've got it, they say. Clearly these far things relevant to people are connected like this. Worse at certain realistic things, in danger of getting realistically outpaced in armchair analysis. When an intelligent person feels like to analyze properly as you should, the others always feel different interrupting urges. Surely this would be interesting to everyone and they would listen like in school or something. Debating, innovating and being intuitive, changing himself and his surroundings into his visionary future. P, and then E for extroverted. The future, it depended on his intelligence. As an idea person, an ENTP's first run at an idea isn't their best, it's their last, all come out unfiltered. He was a man prating of constant improvement, who spends all their life without improvement. Not the philosophers who wonder we're good enough the way we are. Performance and maybe even perfection, not always seen and not always recognized like a deeper theory level. A lot of people's inner worlds can be surprising, hard to imagine and resounding, like you failing to admit being bad at something, yet still intelligent. It's a different world than people who are just meeting the weekends or studies to go to an expensive bar, maybe assertive in career, wealth or privilege, with more than a party, or who live for final, 2 late vacations outside of work or excitement and stupid exciting risk. For those that live for gourmand experiences and the best of culture, for those that question and contrarian fit and conquer, for those that live perfectly confined in the illusions of society and those who don't. It's painstaking eternal cleanse, existing for the future and not the rewarding present, easily finding goals possible in 10 years, fit ambition on the good days and never recognition quick. The bane of realizing, improving everything mediocre, to become some sort of unit. Maybe an Übermensch, quote Nietzsche, on an insane day. When you are a thinker you spend your whole life learning for the sake of learning, never approved, comparing and improving always out of reach. When I would be perfect in brain, speed and brawn, everyone would respect me, they would bask in my glory and I would take it from there. Although when balanced he turned insightful, coming like a new stranger, surprising him too, another exhausting idea for sharing, through easily interrupted. The introverted side people didn't see was that of a nerdy book reader, mathy and strategic, like a brilliant scientist, more dry, logical. The introverted logical part of the thinkers is supposed to be completely dry, even without creativity and intuition. Wouldn't want to not be logical. Climbing societal ladders quietly, more so than the primary extroverted side, interacting with the world and gave him the creativity, resources and strategy to do so. It felt competitive but didn't have as much primary resources as some other people do, the very feeling indeed is auxiliary. In lack of ability against the smartest chessboard masterminds INTJ, for example, they feel they just need more time, or that they are still onto some good stuff. Every personality using their secondary function feel like they are onto some good stuff. Some might be never be reached because of the simple fact they are not introverted. Only 33% are introverted, but everyone has an introverted world, enjoying pursuing alone, exciting different like series binged and unknown unless you talk about it. The depth of the introvert is more surprising said to the way they talk about pen and paper. Enjoying expanding the limits of his knowledge and intelligence, he had a thirst for knowledge and performance, strength that was hard to understand unless he was doing the right thing. Like a voice telling him to inappropriately do something insanely silly. Everyone's eccentricities and quirks make sense when they're doing the right thing. Some of the weirdest people are good at explaining things thoroughly for newcomers, but they also need to listen, match. He could spend time with people, drink and cheer, but also a long time alone as an ambivert. Ambiverts get energy from people but are too sensitive to keep it for long. Like a sadness over a truth. He was an intellectually overexcitable typical in intellect, imagination, at least he had an imagination and psychomotor. Incredibly, excellent active mind, extreme desire to synthesize truth, morals, contemporary theory, to analyze and categorize and think about thinking.
Whoops.
He could be a lone wolf but not as bad as the introverted thinkers. The ENTP is the extrovert with the biggest introverted side. Their minds is a fine place to be alone with, not just the existing world. Some other smart things he was thinking about. He could have been a professor in any science, but he was lazy, waiting for spurs of energy and reliable results. Don't think of quantum physics as logic with exceptions. Think of it as exceptions with logic. Throw the logic out the window.
This got tricky. Not
To
even
get
knows
James' attention, he
anything.
could talk about comfortable things but not comfortable enough. Flashes of enthusiasm and neuroticism.
And pray
If you
against
quantify the
magic.
next logical thing, a sequence of theory, a higher exponentiality, what's the next smart thing in physics after electron position into a probability cloud? We think it must functions as 5 plus 5 or 5 times 5 or necessarily 5 times 5 times 5, but it is not necessarily true, it is just nonlinear, random. What is silly over time through nets of copying control? First twist contemporary. James had a body he had carefully built with steroids over the last 10 years with a brilliant eccentric theory to training, research like a scientist in muscular lab coats and best of the best knowledge of nutrition that few really knew about at this point. Just look at these natural athletic performance enhancers. Sometimes pivoting in books he felt lucky to read, that is potential. Googling the right efficient gym questions for the perfect gym session. Although he had spent the last half his life, like many others, learning about the perfect gym session. Like perfecting a sculpture learning theory and quickly
Only
feeling
one
like
time have I
monologuing.
had a huge looping drop for
Explaining like
someone
fairly
who's died.
scientific, everyone explained like this is true and
that
meta.
didn't get themselves.
So many YouTube videos, exercising vlogs from average people who just did steroids, that is the cycle. You find a new fitness YouTuber, they talk about a different exercising, then they just took steroids. But literally being brilliant, thus he walked around with the perfect updated theory like Golden Seer, if people would only ask. If you're not gaining enough muscle, you must go back to the 8 basics. What a stupid thing to do it was. When you take steroids you lose your mind, not just your dingleberries. Jesus, liver thinks you're an alcoholic. He had figured out a way back with foods that increase learning speed and problem solving, but if there was only a way, like with magic, things could be solved. Thankfully this is a fantasy book. For now there was a muscle monster posing the most impressive. He knew every number that could be given to a muscle, every thought to theoretical, and time for every exercise and intensity. Reps and short recovery. The strongest nerd had figured it out. How much does variety help versus the best exercise for every muscle group? Cocoa powder gave as much grip strength as creatine. Athletic performance enhancers were sometimes cheap too, and he used for anti-cancer properties, etc. He used 6 like nutritional yeast, spirulina algae, black peppermint oil, hard fenugreek tea seeds, maca roots, ashwagandha, rosenroot, and a nitrate diet, giving him a whopping 50 to 60% increased athletic performance, exactly endurance, speed, and strength. The legs went by themselves. Repetition was a thing in theory, and he had a huge advantage over other steroid users. There was no chill, and then he was ready to go again after 2 hours where others needed 20. Legendary exercising routines he had, capable of doing heavier and longer than anyone else. By the way, the gym sessions were 3 hours each. He liked the atmosphere, aluminum can sound, and the smell of the plastic mats at the gym. Gym luxury affected him a lot, like there's the reward he's looking for his efforts. Thusly pinnacle beastum musculum felt like he could just add more and more weight on some muscle groups. It really was an unbreakable endeavor. Like a hero, he was supposed to have this perspective and position. He was a gym monologuer, ever chiseling at the perfect gym session and advice. Philosophized, did he feel right in the muscle contracting, or was it a fake distraction? Which contraction is a distraction? His small perfect packages of advice like a tweet max 280 letters, in the gym, the ENTP being the best to synthesize their thoughts into coherent, well-worded exactly what they meant. He wanted things to be easy, focusing on the biggest things, respecting every gym traveler no matter where they were. Twist contemporary too. He fought in old-fashioned medieval games as a unit, knight style. They really exist as long as you can afford the armor and don't hit below the steel belt. He got excited for the Knight World Championships as much as anything. Light armored macemen with 40 functional helms, dual-wielding axes, arbalist shooting point blank, with slow reload, shooting through plate, but point-blank bows were very plate-piercing similar. Two-handed maces like made out of Japanese wood, double ends, or hammers being too heavy, always like an equation, bald and pale users egregious. Polearms and steel plate are way too good, like a castle you don't think about damage underneath. Maybe one should judge technique and get extra point for other things than just whacking steel. Suggestion: 1 point for every hit, or just enact medieval computer games in real life. They got it figured out. Let's see who wins in a free-for-all. His first weapon of choice was a triple-equipped polearm because it could be used as a spear, slice on the front, or hammer at the back. With the range a cleaving menace, like longer two-handed swords he scrutinized. Secondly, a giant Japanese two-handed katana, Nodashi, he wore in one hand. The dual wield was unrelenting and truly menacing. James thought of every dual wield to be unique in problem-solving to a shield and reliable when switched around. Also, you weren't allowed to hammerplate, it's considerably more expensive. He could swap the wield for defense with mace, an elongated thick blade kite shield, meaning it was sharp as a sword in the end. Often you can smack, stun and stab with your shield in combat. There is more to this simple defensive position, maybe the enemy is so within the reach of the shield length, yet trying to go through. Full black plate armor, white, gilded gold, some places smooth, or arms and legs free, both had their advantages. Better with a kite shield than armor if I could just choose one, thought James strategically, masterfully and a bit playful competitive. Block and slash where my arms go thus. A crowd favorite was his armored boxing, everyone loved knights boxing furiously. Some of these guys stun like a warhammer with their fists through plate. With weapons like the polearm, James also put 4.1 decimeter glaives into his right gauntlet. A polearm is only dangerous at the pointy end, closer attacks were stabbed with his gaunt gauntlet George steroid unicorn pants thus. Everything changed like a chapter, but not yet, where one evening after hot medieval games he heard someone sniggering in his computer corner thus. There was nothing there? It seems he was being sent incredibly suggestive Gachi-Muchi songs, there goes another one, something was just too ridiculous to keep a straight face. Specifically trying to communicate, what is this you're listening to, human? Revealed and silly over time, James stretched out his hand into his apartment nothingness and felt temperature difference, cold, something wet, suction and stretching of his mind. Things changed as he stuck around. That could only mean aliens? Deducted panicky James, they must be serious sternly as per needed basis, but this through sensitivity that too ridiculous for the paid work thus. Advanced civilization through technology, carefree world where we toil in despair and worry. Technology advances pretty quick with just 1,000 years through for anyone, or ourselves. More sensitive and smarter than your imagination, James used his imagination. James had read about the most common alien encounters on Wikipedia and thus imagined the Scandinavian-looking alien, a cousin to humans concerned with spiritual paths. James realized just thinking about summoning aliens, and summoning, chanting annoying should be enough. James had been scientifically open to aliens because of the prominence of 1,000 planets with life conditions like Earth. The four thinker personalities believe in aliens the most. Look at the pollution they exert into the atmosphere seen through color gas cameras. But what do you do now when you actually meet one now? Partying? What be thine alien, Grey, homunculus, Scandinavian cousin? Stop sending out shuttles looking for life, we're right here, I admitted. James thought, can you think what I think, and then said it. And feel what you feel, Jim Human. He looked like a mix of gray alien and something taller forsooth. Did you figure out time travel yet? James was ready to have a pleasant, well-mannered conversation. It only works with special fashionable hamsters thus put through non-Intel graphics cards. Just recently, the humorless voice answered, it was unexpectedly difficult, like learning a new language, difficult, like being unable to master. Time, space, dimension, machine and spiritual opening at the same time, not a lot of people thought of that. It can't happen to me, and let me guess, you cannot show thus? No human unit, think of 5 reasons why. I am one of the smartest humans. Unexpectedly he said, very well Jim Human. What about, pollution balance, population? Shut up. Unexpectedly and tiresome James pulled out a gun. If you threaten me you will always think to rectify the situation, you will come to compensate, think up new ideas, but smart boy, you will never be smart enough to figure it out. I wish there was a time where a bullet didn't win against every duel thus and everything, the gun wins, I will win. There is no skill, no time to think, the cool things now is the size of the firearm you wield, only the aim. The alien man dodged like morphing, swirling through a dash, cheating through the human technology. The alien took his risk, coldly threatened, and he was indeed pulled through a cascade of time and colors, but it felt like his feet were still on the ground. He had been transported to medieval London 1,000 years ago. He was ostracized with a katana odachi and 18 bullets in a time of arbalist and warhammer, blood and ice, wine and piss. Chapter 2. Ass of Power and the Path of the Nerd. James really had a strong ass, it was a breathing living block, you could see it like anti-gravity, something lifted with ease, doesn't matter how heavy the box was. You could source a lot of power to movement lifting, where pushing it was connected to the bottom, it is a large muscle. Fitting in his full mail, fashionable like you would worry where the skill was, lacking a morning star he had been practicing so much consistently to auxiliary, his mind had really fitted to bludgeoning, then to racial considering. He had written about a cosmopolitan black London man in a time of theory and tolerance through history, but now things were cerebral. There was still racism and stupid people in modern eras, he thought. A struggle that should be won, and people the most tolerant and standards people should have had earlier. What he didn't know was that there were now staunch wizards, just like in the stories. With the visor down you could not see his melanin, he pretended to be white as cocaine and snowflakes. Would he fight another day, summon the grid or pretend to be anonymous like an assassin? With my visor down I can play a two-faced game whenever I want, reap the benefits and of manners. He had speedy strange thoughts about what more you could get away with in this time. Time for hard and right and wrong to catch up to the thoughts. What it really was a kind of moral purifier, a wanting to be good and lawless desperado. He went through lakes smashingly British. What life could there be in black and treacherous mud, except potential life? The alien missed without about 500 meters, it was just a wee bit, or maybe continental movement. There was a tree of 42 hanged men and 2 lavish gray and yellow-colored knights, gleaming like sentinels and robotic limbs, minding their business and status. One had their hands on their pommel, showing too little care of the carcass. Ironically, they didn't say anything, concerned with being knights. There was Roman rounded bridges and dirt roads until London steel like flat stones. Guards seemed intolerant enough and maybe shouldn't have wielded a polearm. He went towards Hayroof and Pie Bakery, a castle with a yard and perplexing medieval smells, like old furniture, sheets, smells from a different time, energy of different dominant, privileged things. There were banners held in hand, on castles and over chainmail, Scottish blue and white, square high castle segments but not fashionably bland, ramparts. Towers for chess and halls for complaining, and just like in the background of the British flag, maybe this was the beginning of the Twitter logo. Farquaad thus predicted Facebook. At a pub baked beans on toast he felt retro-legendary and sucked in all information with his 5 senses. Something unusual but he did when overcharged and overhealthy. It gave him access to overloading his senses. 500 meters is enough to walk when you're lazy. James flicked on and off his laziness, not noticing breaching limits. He had his own pace of things, something ahead, sometimes behind. Intellectual mentions would stimulate him and he didn't notice he had an infinite energy for mental accumulation, sparring. To his right ear he heard a lady say, "The youth in London just want to drink and discuss football." Seems like nothing had changed, he thought. He went to the bartender with the wrong pounds and was interrupted thus, "Thrice. I'll have what he's having." A gigantic barbarian woman stood thus, in black leather, muscular like a bodybuilder but less contoured, enormous 8-pack, and on her back she had a German 2-hander, a Zweihander. The thing had a meter guard. Above the hilt, egg face, fashionably and sexily showing some plenty skin betwixt leather, circular secondary ceremonial guard and a grip that was noticeably large even if you knew 2 hands could fit there. She was fair enough for you to accept the muscle, long hair unknown to men with the same haircut. Something like Guinness, answered James in beer territory. I have Guinness if you want Guinness. No, something like Guinness. If you want that I have Guinness. Alright, you convinced me. Alcohol affected James less because he was huge muscle but more because he had no fat cells and the biggest abs. I don't recognize your armor. What is that, from fashionable London? Bird and Buckler Sons? More like from another contemporary time, said Sentinel James. James paid with a whole pound which he thought would confuse the barman. I got this sword as a mercenary, and she eyed the holster, impossible to miss. The impossible communication was of a feeler thus. James thought to be a mercenary, fitting in like a sword in a woolly glove. Time to lie, pretend with ploy. What do you work with, lady? Are you fresh with a kill or boat? What brings you to drink alcohol? I'm a mercenary, lady of Germany first. I'm paid by King Henry I, she said. You have been pulled into the 100-year French-English War. Can I have an opinion of that? As a historian, James remembered we have 2 huge parts of the French northwest coast but would not keep them. It's a German sword, Zweihander. It's easy enough to swing, you don't need heavy armor, people just keep their distance. I'm a German mercenary. It's heavyweight, he said, versed in the ways of thus culture, thought and speech. Maybe. I'm just procuring cold talk, he said as if the sword was a lightweight, ready to show of his dormantness. I've never lost in physical endeavors hither, do you dare to arm wrestle a just woman? Honor the streak? There was the reason. James reached out his hand and met thus leathery grasp. She was strong and practiced in a way that reminded of steroid friends. After some even fighting, James figured out he could win this. He had more strength and endurance. She used everything, weak to sudden moves like a small shoulder. He showed a finger and put it on the table edge. With this tiny difference, James rotated his upper body 90 degrees, balanced on his finger, pulled her onto the table and slammed his fist upon it. He exclaimed, being talented at showing off. Impossible, she exclaimed for some reason, concerned with something greater. Fine streak, I am sure. 27 arrogant men, she said. James opened his visor and made a face like a vacuum cleaner. Gotta eat big to get big. I didn't know thine honorable knightness was white as an ice crystal in Ass Creek winter, sir. My name is Eugene thus, and your katana I know from my travels, admitted. It's the 2-handed size, Odachi thus, something they have to name longer swords. I wield it in my right. James had figured out how to nullify the damages of steroids too, with liver-strengthening superfood like wheat germ, quadruple green tea capsules working overtime, being poisonous. Even too much antioxidants at once is poisonous. James was the kind to reach the limit, he could feel it too, but then you could eat other antioxidants. Cardiovascular, kidney organ working food, and 2 variants at once of a liver working medicine. With the 2 super compounds sulforaphane and spermidine, make your own joke, it's a longevity compound efficient for longevity, you don't need to do anything else. He figured he would come out even in longevity on top. If you repair the damage each time, there is no damage, like banging your toe against a desk. But before the steroids he was already a monster, winning competitions where his opponents used them, and few years in the gym. There was a certain smile that was real on stage there, something intellectually golden. To be the biggest you have to already have the genetics, for example, so many get an abnormal, huge organ gut. Palumboism, it is known, from Dave Palumbo. He knew how to change his genes into better roads and repair telomeres, DNA, having genetical advantages like a scientist. Eugene watched him doze off into a mathematical world. He thought so. The surroundings seemed to slow down and said, "You need less recovery time when training your arms, speaking of which they are small, relatively, and explosive, train them like they are. The legs have 4 times more muscle. Just as you eat some and work out some and rest some, you will become strong." She had a working lazy strategy here and seemed much more fat in spirit whenever the words came across. "I need to form a mold around a bullet, craft it if I have to, remove it and fill it with red-hot steel to potentially get more bullets." I didn't understand any of that honestly. James showed a bullet and rotated it. Pure magic, I would say. James liked the simpleness of the medieval times. A lot of people do, but not because he liked nothing changing. It's so inviting. There's solid castles, walls that honestly didn't bear siege anyway in the latest few hundred medieval.
Maybe I play more Hearthstone tomorrow.
But they were indomitable, stagnant, infinite in the beginning. That's when the very expensive building trend started. As a historian he understood these things, and as a thinker he understood deeply, connecting things anyway. Eugene told James about the Gladiator Coliseum-like tournament in the Duke's honor. Posts interestingly said 70 kilograms weight limit, knock them unconscious for 30 seconds or death. No stupid faces when unconscious. 5,000 pounds for the winner, invitations to royal arrogance guaranteed. No griefing wizards, go to Glasgow you tits. Just kill everyone, be the ultimate predator, Eugene competitively said. You can swing your sword and sit on them thus. Someone cut off their beard pretending not to be a wizard. But he had to muster something thus. It's just like the tourney games, 1 versus 1 at a time. You got a feeling like this would be a bad idea, maybe a set-up feeling, because maybe that fighting, the best 6 or 4 could result in your death. He went in and noticed the gladiators chatting about the entrance. They were social meatbags. Sven is unstoppable. No one can stand before the earth-shattered dual hammer wields. There is no death sure but from Sven. The Grim Reaper has 26-inch arms and his name is Sigmund. Do you guys think I'm going to be worried about anything like this? Said James, still towering, pulling a seat. Did you listen to a word we said, goon? Said like an ESFJ. I'm happy to tell you should just try to survive against Sigmund, dance and make him tired. There is a strategy to every foe, and everything. We become brothers here quickly, dying brothers. The man looked in the distance. We who are about to die salute you. When the gates opened he saw a very ironclad opponent with a hammer, Sven the shield guard. This was going to require something else than cutting, maybe. His throat seemed wide open when he looked at least a little bit up. The assassin looked for the bleeding throat. There is not much tanking plate mail against a hammer either. He surprisingly threw his odachi like a spear arch long when they were in range, but his opponent looked down as he came charging surprisingly, then up again enough to deflect the giant Japanese javelin. James tried to slash his throat, but Sven thus looked down and deflected with gleaming metal, defiant faceless helmet and will. The announcer said, fat and enjoying himself like God Bacchus. No one had seen that gap coming. We understand now. James was trying to make his opponent look up. The power on metal was crushing. The next slice against his face knocked Sven spinning to the ground. Why did he think he could defend against that in the moment? Maybe there was something to it, but he couldn't fully comprehend. It's about summoning enough strength, as you said you could in previous fights. James swung like a lumberjack splitting knotty contemporary wood. Twice he hammered on the ground where the Englishman fell down, rolled away just in time. Strickland propane jutsu. With a jumping kick Sven was hit like he had been boxer fist grenaded. I'm faster than this. James swung overhead but fainted. The Englishman blocked overhead and his own vision, but then got hit to the kidney. He got knocked to the ground badly, crushed now by the swinging polearm. A weak shield was presented from the ground. James smashed through it. Dust filled his helmet, what felt like fate in slow motion. The Englishman wasn't ready for the third swing with even more power. He admitted in a way of being defeat, or him bigger, and he crushed his side. What would he do now defeated? There was no good idea coming into his mind. I'm ready to lop off your head. Come at me, said James. James smashed the knight in full polearm reach. He struck like he had killed him. The crowd tried to estimate the damage. Christ almighty, said the announcer, we have never seen someone like this. James got more critical hits in smashing his armor and leaving black eyes, shoulders, bruises. The Englishman was shaky and hurt. He only knew how to think and stab simply now, practiced. He was unsure of how things would go, but he decided to stay in it. He decided to win. The Englishman swung his hammer, practiced from the right. James grabbed his hammer and his polearm and threw both up. As the Englishman looked up he slashed his throat flashily with his glaive gauntlet. James didn't have to save his opponents anymore. His next opponent he waited 10 minutes for. He had brilliant thoughts about fighting that were out of touch with the place. If I screw up I'm dead, he thought competitively. Maybe I should do these games where you cannot do killing. He went through his usual tourney combos in his head. No one is going to defend against all of them. Would a 95% chance to survive be worth betting on in life? How many safe bets can a man make in a game of blood and tears? To drench in hot blood, ambition and conquer, to circle the swordsman of songs and tear his creed. What is safe in terms of dancing with swords, bludgeoning? Accidents in the upper leg? He stared at a medium-armored Englishman. He looked more Roman. Slits for eyes, steel mohawk from some animal maybe with feathers, helm width twice as long as his head, like he would catch rain. Pan-looking chest plate, spiked shoulder plates forward, tower shield and gladius, no arm or shin armor. The gladius is sporting today, everyone likes fighting with arms and legs free, they are agile like not a warrior, said the announcer preparing hype and dying. James made some noise for the crowd looking like a rider of death, he slammed his polearm against his glaive kite shield 4 times thus. His opponent taunted him which James thought felt out of place of his mind. A person with as much armor as him would obviously be exhausting, slow. James was confident in his movement and training for his armor through, in the gym stacking 4 plates for his sit-ups and sprinting, pushing upside-down table-looking objects filled with plates and the occasional posing gym bro. I get nervous when I'm not in the gym, James's friend Nicolaus. Women were more scarce, his special training his opponent did not. He was used to it like he was used to being a heavy runner of muscle, you get used to it, your muscles get stronger. He had no problem doing 1 hour of cardio with the muscle 2 days a week. Bigger guys would be bored but they did it anyway, fearsome combinations of biceps and heart. 170 kilos of muscle is counterproductive sometimes. 170 kilos of muscle is 10% above what the biggest bodybuilders get. The horrible sounds of steel clanged as wills collided, James stabbed 4 times thus, thrusts met by his opponent's shield. Experienced with a spear, he started poking high and getting out of reach from his opponent's weapon. The poking and backtracking maybe didn't seem to make any sense at first but James picked up speed and elegance, his footwork back had worked like outsmarting him, he could keep up slippery defensive movement until he got hit. The Englishman was just defending now, suddenly a thrust went through his shoulder, then another one. Damage in the face of deadly combat told him weakness like give up and run away, flesh was breached, denial of death. With enough spear poking and speed hits usually go through, something you would not expect to not block. The Roman grunted painfully and dropped his shield, it didn't respond as it usually does. Fight me without a shield, or you are boring like a raven is grey. You bore me, cur. They fought without shields, James did a homie stock and the Englishman did good work parrying with his sword. James got many steel punches in and kicks in, something more effective than punches. Fate told the Roman the fight was over, but he stubbornly kept practice. The Roman took his polearm under the speared IP and James his hand trying to swing the gladius. Short sword. I am not afraid to die, if this is where I die so be it. Well said as anything, James cut off his right arm brutally with his glaive kite shield until the skin and plunged his knife gauntlet into his eyes lid like a punch. His next opponent came just right after an announcement about local pie, it was the fast food of the ages. 15 minutes. He was surprised to see someone a head taller but up to the challenge. He was northern like no hospitality. The even bigger gladiator named Skegix started charging towards James. He wore black plate mail, a bucket-like helm looked dangerous. A square he looked. The wiser thing to do would be to get some momentum himself but he wanted to beat him in pure power. With not normal in the moment energy he met his opponent with a charged-up boxing-like uppercut. Skegix flew high into the air, actually James seemed to have uppercut his head clean off, helmet and everything. A painful endeavor set his shoulder. After some manly chatting with nearby gladiators in the waiting hall like nothing special had happened, he was announced Robert the Hammerer. Robert was going to play offensively with his 2 warhammers, he switched arms with his polearm and put his katana in his right. Robert soon also realized he was going to be outranged. He came aggressively and would have been successful, just like before but here he was poked back again and again by the dual wield. Dual wield EEH? Said Robert Kingsley like a protagonist, you could almost see the crown. I have an army on my back. They call me Gazarm the Gargoyle or Atlatl the Army. James parried a hammer thrust skillfully, he thought anyway, no I don't want them to call me that either. Robert was good at swinging his warhammers, James didn't give him the credit that he was exceptional. It was like adapting to a hydraulic press, it was like dodging scythe swings aiming for your soul. James was menacing with his range, like a snake biting anything that came too close. They danced and Robert had a true shitty time. He lost his temperament and started swearing after getting stabbed 4 times in his left leg. Damn you, armpits of elven stars. James sliced up his right arm, making an artwork with a few strokes. Robert picked up an arbalist dropped from a nearby contestant, not cleaned up like something you could use. James played by blocked with his shield, ducking. He was as safe as gleaming, comfortable like a tortoise, strategic now in offense. A hammer came flying, James dropped his polearm and caught the hammer flying by his right cheek. Sometimes your opponents have the mind and throw tantrums. You can trade this for my Nodashi if you want and threw his katana tauntingly. You're making a fool out of me. Yes, James said, do you want to die as well? I would have had you. Death is too finite for the fun of fighting. Robert had a hard time using the Nodashi in one hand, after some contemplating seconds he threw his other hammer. James blocked this one with the first. Maybe I should get a belt with warhammers just for throwing, James thought with a winning mentality. Robert started calling him racist slurs in frustration. Robert was the kind to only be racist when in defeat. Rank tests your character. James thought of all those times he injected his perfect left butt cheek with steroids. You want my polearm as well it seems. No cur, die flashily. He threw his second hammer and it hit Robert in the stomach like a cannonball, he flew backwards 2 meters. Robert wondered if magic was being used against him. As he raised his head, a kite shield came flying and hit him like an extended arm. Death is coming hither. What's your name? How can anyone be ready to die? That's like asking you to be ready for the unexpected. James went for a jumping hammer throw. It was so fast Robert didn't move and flew back like hit by a train.
Never mind.
He threw
I'm
his
only going
Nodashi
50
like a
minutes
railgun.
actually.
It pierced Robert in the non-stabbed shin. He was going for a two-handed polearm throw arched back when he noticed Robert was unconscious. Stupid face. Our fellow wins again. What do we call you? Said the announcer stupidly. Thus stellar butt cheeks. James raised his eyebrows. In sand mixed with blood and sweat stood an oversized bald goon next with a small wooden shield and a hooked sword. Brass fist knuckles, rough shoulder plates unfashionable, two small chest pieces held together by leather straps. He was like a cyclops in spirit. How did you get so far, I wonder? Talk with your fists, he said stupidly. James took his Nodashi and went for an overhead. The goon stopped it with his shield and sword together, slowing it down eventually. It is a weak position of strength though, and James powered through for a face slice. James did some confusing footwork that was completely missed by his opponent and swung from the side. The goon blocked the long katana effortlessly and bullyingly slid his shield along the blade and hit James in the face. It sounded like a frying pan. Bad measurements. Your mom gets hit by parked cart wagons, said the giant baldness. You hit like a constipated orangutan, said James, enjoying the debate. James was the kind of hyperbolic to spur drama and taunt just because he was so good at it, because it was funny. He would say the darndest things with his high energy and get proper responses back from crazy people. Statistically, this meant extroverted. They got kicks in at the same time, powerfully knocking each other back with the opportunity. For the rest of 5 minutes, the goon couldn't get near without getting cut on his arms. He disarmed his opponent with pain eventually. I had an intellectual insult, but it would have flown over your head. Like a bird. Are you still thinking about the orangutan? Talk with your fists, he said in the same stubborn way. Sure. Then James threw his weapons to the ground and removed his gauntlet glaives. He looked over his shoulder at the crowd for a second, slowly taking off his chest plate and helmet like he was taking off his clothes for a shower. Both hands in the air for the crowd, they hailed him with excitement. James raised his steel forearms to his face and started doing the footwork of a boxer. The goon was silent, a missed opportunity. Can you face me like a man? James said like he had a handlebar mustache. A man has got to do what a man has got to do. James and the goon started armored boxing. Teeth flew like sugar pills, dices for the dead, consistently and continuously thus. Both were two strong warriors. Punches flew surprising, but they were determined. James's chiseled face looked better taking a punch, especially in slow-mo we can see. It was an even match. I feel free without this heavy weight. This is a great way of beating people. Take this if you're a man, the goon said and charged up his fist with spare power. In his independent game for endurance, James stood still and handsome. He could be quite enduring, especially if he consciously turned it on. Sometimes he didn't take or even felt damage that others would. He was indomitable like God Achilles. It looked like a hammer had hit the side of his head and he made quite a face towards the camera, daunting power. Are you not entertained, gentlemen? The men are measuring their handlebar mustaches. Caster thus. Take this if you're a man, James said, foot forward, and he thought as himself punching through him. The goon looked shocked, in pain, and then slapped him with his enormous hand like a bear. In many ways it was like a punch. James slapped back, unknown even harder, unyielding 100%. They had a slap fight that stunned each other eventually. Eventually the goon got bored of slapping and started fighting with his fists again. Low on stimulants yet unable to find it. You're weak as my baby ant, he said. When people are this strong, a boxing match is decided quickly. Boxers get much stronger faster than resilient, etc. It's about dodging. Both dodged deep with footwork. The goon was a fast mass. Sparks flew across James's field of view as he got stunned and oblivious of danger. When he came to his senses and noticed he was getting to his limits too. Opportunities for combos arose and the goon was eventually just protecting himself with his long arms. He had to punch a few times in the area to get his most powerful hits in. Omewa, Mo Shindiru, you're already dead, James said, and with the power of a charged fist and steroids he punched his face merrily in. It sounded like a plunger. The goon just grinned and looked invincible, face caved in. He stood still through. James got a bit nervous and started to do a kind of automatic doubting. The doubting led to another supreme punch. This one might have been more excellent than the first one. The goon quickly fell over like a plank, knocked unconscious. That was his limit. James felt like in a garden when he saw his soldier opponent with a magical dwarven grenade launcher and a gardening shovel. Technically it's a shovel. He had a stainless steel pot on his head, handle leaning west. I have seen this weapon in the armory. It deals no damage, it's for speedy movement. This is a weapon for a real man. He pulled his polearm and dug his shield into the earth like Icon. Surely no one would pick it up. They clashed epically between steel, both grinning. They cancelled, going for another angle. The soldier was good. He deflected every attack with just a shovel. Overhead, liver poking, deflected slashes thus, footwork back. The soldier shot a grenade at his feet, jumping like a hawk. He hunted for prey with his shovel. Incredible crash. James got hit like by an intense, bodybuilder gorilla on his head. He flew and hit the ground discombobulated. Jesus Christ, he gathers power from the grenade jumping, that shovel is a legend shovel. The soldier jumped on the side of the arena and then again even higher with double grenade. James met his power, deflected powerfully with spin to his arc, they were both knocked back from the maddening power. The soldier grenaded several times and tried to land on him with his boots, they crunched the ground worryingly, dangerously like he had been 300 kilogram. Weak on the ground, James did a gleaming flurry of holes against the soldier, he took too much damage and was hurt into his face by the hammer part of the polearm. He feinted overhead, to the side and he went to block nothing, the spun a lap and bludgeoned his head to the side. James weakened the grenade launcher by smashing two, he had no defense against it. This is it, you will be beaten by grit and pure skill. Soldier said, injured. The soldier launched two grenades in the air, he jumped. They exploded eventually at the same time at his feet and he went flying around in circles throughout the arena, more shooting at the feet, picking up speed with reflexes and skill impossible. He came flying straight with the gardening trowel high in his hand. Did he really understand what power would come thus? Steroid Eagle. Blood Shaman. Blood Mantra. The soldier hit him but James powered through like never seen in a night tournament, through the unavoidable damage and pain.
Bro, I can't hit these guys.
GGG. Both laid on the ground smoking after the hit combat tested, the soldier had reached violence and speed stupendous. Caster. Both contestants lie on the ground, power into power. 20 seconds passes. Only one got up, James. He rose smoking superior, mind reset handily like a new day after weightlifting 6 days a week. Getting patched up with some other gladiators, he quickly felt like dueling again, but he knew better. It was him and the penultimate victor now, if he beat him he won. How big will this guy get? Instead, in front of him stood a meek but perfectly and sleek, expensively plated knight with an oversized gleaming tower shield. He must be the most formidable knight, but in his left hand was a tiny golden dagger. His visor was a long slit two-piece helm and his shoulders narrowly built. He was covered perfectly, banners non-protecting blue and white were hanging and decorating. The first thing he did was drop his shield and run away comically at the size of his opponent. He had the speed of a dozen hamsters, kind of speeding up automatically when in danger. James felt like competing with speed too, fine, he wasn't as confident here technically but he was also not as fast. Just like a top 1%er. This man was agile, jumping over the weapons James threw at him over the arena. James picked up weapons and weapons, left over and from dead yet determined hands, thrown like a charitable donation. James took off his breastplate, kite shield and started running after him with his glaive gauntlet like an assassin. Eventually James turned out to be faster with Olympic steps but could not deal with the quick turning instead, he was like an antelope on Animal Planet. Weighing into the corners was not enough. The crowd started booing and the announcer announced. Remember you have to fight Porpoise, a French name. Right, a shrill meek voice said. Don't give me any permanent damage, big man, said Porpoise. Why are you scared like a rain cloud? Porpoise unhinged a part of his face armor so he could thus speak properly. He spoke like neurotic and his peers lucky he decided to talk to them. It all started when I was a boy. Never mind, don't hurt me, I regret this, I think thus. James started poking and slicing with his polearm but Porpoise kept up. He started thrusting his polearm so fast that the reader missed the movement while reading. James felt brilliant but no matter how fast he was, Porpoise could match it like a mirror. It was different for him, like a genius reflex. Are you still interested to know? It started when, anyway, he was completely in his negative world and passed. I don't know, maybe laddie, over a drink? James got friendly competitively with the men who were about to die. He took a break and rested his hands on his pommel strategizing. He started feinting and double feinting and then went for an overhead, the weakness of shields, asides from maybe curved blades. But Porpoise spinned his heavy shield upwards and deflected it easily, dodged his next kick and even ducked a stab too powerful. Surprisingly Porpoise went for an average attack, and then some blind swinging, put his weight against him, entangling their legs too. James got unbalanced from the judo, after the second time, he got entangled dangerously but stopped Porpoise's dagger by clutching his forearm. He crunched through the metal slowly, fixing his forearm into a position. You can't beat me, I have the ultimate defense, Porpoise said with the confidence only someone weak and cowardly can, maybe eventually. I'll put you in the femur breaker, have a chicken leg and spit out the bone. What is savage? No you won't, James, I think I know people like you. At least I have complicated problems. James thought about his gun and the value of his limited resource versus the unexpected, instead he merged a bit of his kite shield and polearm into a larger hammer. Hammer time, James said onto the gleaming sentinel. Horrible sounds. James hammered like his shield was inches away from breaking, and his opponent could not last, it would have been impossible. James put on an abnormal display of power and ferocity like an Olympic athlete found on a farm. The crowd was shocked and gasped as the end was closing in, they thought, but his giant shield held stalwart, indomitable. James was starting to feel and emanate like 1,000 samurai. Eventually this speed and frequency was just right, swinging faster and harder. I can cut through steel, he said, merged with his weapon and spirit. This isn't steel, Porpoise said triumphantly. James two-handedly walked towards Porpoise with his Nodashi. His demon aura, a killing machine like ancient, started protruding, elongating his sword and body with red-black lightning. Ultimately, James cut through his shield in one blow, weapon in the front of his cuirass. Most of the helm hit the ground in defeat with that porpoise sliced and down. James was ready to execute like the gods had commanded it. Please don't hurt me, please, I hate pain. I fight to avoid pain and avoid losing, Porpoise said sheepishly. Playing not to lose isn't the same at all as playing to win.
Okay.
James emphasized.
Have a nice day. If you are EU, you are not working right now. Keep doing that. Have a nice time.